Hi there. Hi, how are you? It's been a while. Welcome. Welcome back, everyone. I've been on hiatus for about a month now, and I've got something that I prepared for you just in time for the Aquarius full moon, which is happening this Saturday, the 9th of August at 5:55 p.m. if you're in the southern hemisphere with me. So if all goes to plan, hopefully this will be published in time for you to spend the moon with it. If not, it's perfectly fine. Listen to it in retrospect. A lot of what I've got to talk about today has to do with the month that was. So the last time that I published anything on this channel was for I can't even remember, the Cancer new moon, I think it was, which was over a month ago now. I missed out on the Capricorn full moon, and I missed out on the Leo new moon as well. I missed out on that changeover into Leo season. All through July, we also missed out on describing to one another what this outer planet shift might feel like. The good news is that we can discuss in hindsight what it has felt like. If you're new here, my name is Uma, and I give tarot and astrology readings that line up with the lunation cycle. And more often than not, it's every 2 weeks, but unfortunately this time around, it's been over a month. If you are a long-time viewer and would like to hear about what's been happening in my life for the past little bit of time, then stick around to the end. I might have a little sharing circle at the end just to let you know how I've been feeling and how I've been using the astrology to reconcile a lot of those feelings. But enough about me for the moment. I wanted to backtrack and I wanted to think about the very beginning of July as being the signifier for this outer planetary shift that we've been talking about for nearly, I would probably say over a year now. The planet Uranus moved into Gemini on the 7th of July, and thus completing a whole configuration of outer planets sitting in either air signs or fire signs. Very different to the water sign, earth sign configuration that we have become so used to. Pluto now sits in Aquarius, Uranus sits in Gemini, Neptune and Saturn both sit in the sign Aries, and the only signifier of any kind of attachment to the water element is the planet Jupiter in Cancer. So the outer planets tend to herald in something of a universal changeover. These planets, because they take such a long time to go around the zodiac, we kind of feel them in a collective sense rather than the immediacy of some of the internal planets as far as Mercury, Venus, Mars, the moon, etc. are concerned. There's something slow moving about all of them, and there's something of size about all of them too. What I've been looking through have been the transits for July, not only including that shift of outer planetary energy, but then just as we move into and start to settle into this new world, this new energetic force field, then the planets all begin their dominoes of stationing retrograde and in fact moving backwards through the zodiac. Saturn and Neptune and Uranus too will both find themselves back into the signs prior. So Pisces for Neptune and Saturn, and Taurus for the planet Uranus. So this period of the calendar from July until about October is our first taste of what will be set up full-time next year in 2026. I'm going to focus on Uranus though, because that was the last one. That was the one that I was absent for in terms of describing. The planet Uranus represents to us a shock to the system, an over-emphasis on energetic exchange. The planet Uranus is the one that was discovered after Saturn with a telescope, when the technology had reached its point when Uranus was ready to reveal itself to us, was when we started to incorporate the significations of what Uranus might mean into something of an astrological language. The Greeks called Uranus the god of the sky. Uranus was the one that made love with Gaia, that birthed forward everything about life. In medical astrology, the sign Gemini can rule over the nervous system. And so if you've been feeling at your wit's end, if you've been feeling completely fried, almost as if there's been a power surge in your ecosystem, you plugged something in that was faulty or that took too much power from the grid for such a small circuit, and you feel fried, then we can probably look to this experience of Uranus moving into the sign of Gemini as some sort of example of that. Because Pluto has been sitting in Aquarius at the very first degrees, with that journey of Uranus into Gemini, there is a force, a connecting tissue, exchange between those two planets in air signs. Now, this is something that as a group, as a consciousness, everyone that is conscious at present, we've never experienced something like this before. This is our first go of it. Now, when we think about Gemini and we think about Aquarius, we are in air sign territory. So we're in the way that we think, we're in our thought forms, our mental capacity. And so what I can attest is that this period of time has almost forced us to recognize our limits and recognize what we're ingesting unconsciously and how that unconscious drip feed of information or ideas, thoughts, opinions has reached its capacity at this time. There's only so much that we are able to absorb without finding different strategies to regulate this system. If it's your nervous system that feels on edge, how are we going to, from here, work with the sensitivity and the care that we need to take for our nervous systems moving forward? It's almost as if we've got fire and we've got air to work with for the next little bit of time, and we know what fire breeds on is air, oxygen. The more oxygen is present, the bigger the fire. You can feel that sort of sensitivity in the way that perhaps you're relating to one another. In another way, I've been monitoring my social media engagement, and this is part of the crossroads that I found myself on insofar as engaging in these sorts of platforms for information sharing and for community building. We think about community building, we do think about the sign Aquarius too. Aquarius is very concerned with the greater group, the collective well-being, and what could be a helpful relationship between Gemini and Aquarius at the moment has proved to be of a certain level that I, for one, am not prepared for. And perhaps maybe you might have been feeling a bit of an overload of information too. You've been feeling perhaps maybe chalking up your time insofar as what you've been doing and how you've been living online in the virtual reality, as opposed to how you've been living and existing in the flesh and blood, real physical reality. If we think all the way back to the beginning stages of the COVID pandemic, and we think about the necessity of building structures of community online in the virtual world through a computer screen, that is one thing. This current moment is another. In the interim, the oligarchs of technology have been toiling away in the background, working on different technologies and different softwares and different systems to keep us engaged in this capacity. I know that a lot of communities exist online as a form, in form as necessity. I know a lot of people find their people in the virtual world because it's difficult for them to move around in a safe manner in their physical world. That's something to be respected. There's also something to be savvy to as far as the addictive qualities of these worlds. And please don't get me wrong, the irony of me describing or criticizing online communities to you through a computer screen is not lost on me. What I feel, and perhaps you might be feeling too, is a compulsion in terms of the addictive qualities of these algorithms and these systems that keep us engaged. The way that we search and the way that we consume information has all turned into a slot machine. It's turned into the technology that they use in casinos to keep people engaged in electronic game systems. There's something here that hopefully this shock from Uranus in Gemini, Gemini being a sign of great communication. Think of the twins and that eternal conversation that they engage in. Think about the questions and answers that arrive in Gemini. This shock to the system of July perhaps has jolted you into some realization of just how unconscious you've been to the level or quantity of what you've been consuming. It's a very precious and precarious time right now in terms of keeping our finger on the pulse of the facts of the matter, and also keeping a commitment to engaging in the physical world in relationship with flesh and blood community. Just one example of a kind of wake up has been well, maybe I'll save this till the end, actually. That's not relevant right now. Let's continue. Working with this full moon, using the offer from Luna to tap into our maybe unconscious or hidden emotions, things that we've been holding at bay. There's going to be a highlight, I think, on our sense of humanity. There's going to be a spotlight on our ideas of the human condition, how humankind relates to itself. And also there's going to be an incredible urgency for us to enact and maintain some healthy boundaries intellectually and mentally around ourselves in order to keep ourselves sane. In the way of reading the zodiac through tarot, if we were to do that at this full moon, the moon itself would be highlighting the Six of Swords card. And you can see in pictorial this necessity to move, to journey somewhere, anywhere that is safer than where we are right now. If we relate the water in this card to our emotional ecosystem, the way that we feel, the way that we express ourselves through our heart and through our feeling self, the treachery of where we're leaving is right here. That choppy water, the danger of such huge emotional waves. And we're heading into something much clearer and calmer, where we can assess and we can regroup where to go from here. The time is now to wake up. The time is now to be alert, and the time is now to reach out and to find and make direct contact with community, and community in the sense of a group of folks that have everybody's best interests at heart, separate to the seduction of power that seems to be playing with the fire of this astrology, separate to the kind of apprehension. No, that's the wrong word I'm looking for. I'm looking for something that sort of feels more like a happy trigger finger. There seems to be the... Come on, keep going. In fact, I'm going to use the astrology to help me talk about what I'm trying to describe here. I'm going to set this card down just for the moment. But we can talk about Mars right now if we like. The red, burning hot planet of fury, of rage, and of aggression. Mars has just entered the day before this full moon, or a couple of days before, has entered into the third air sign, Libra. So there's a triplicity of air signs being activated at this time. Mars is working in synergy with Pluto and with Uranus. If we think about shocks, if we think about destruction, and we think about aggression, that doesn't feel incredibly healthy to me in terms of a mentality or a ideology. We're going to work through that and recognize that Mars is actually not in good health in Libra. They'd much prefer and can work better in the sign Aries. So in opposition, they're too far away from their home base to work in their best effect. This feels like a lot of words and maybe less action. And I think that when it comes to keeping ourselves in healthy container, healthy intellectual and mental container, we need to really be honest and clear with ourselves about our values, about our ethics, and we are going to absolutely refuse to engage in anything that feels like cruelty, in anything that feels like a power game, a power play. The world stage is proving to us at this time that power is a seductive and insidious drug, and that power left unchecked can lead to disastrous results. This feels like the responsibility of the collective group. And in a lot of ways, I believe that it is our responsibility as a collective. And this is the difference between being open and aware and consuming all of this information, all of the realities of the current state of affairs of the world, the current evil that is permeating the folks in power. And what we need to do is to remember that collectively it is our responsibility, not individually. Because for some of us, not everyone, but some of us absorb this level of horror and in some bizarre way somehow internalize that responsibility and that reality to a point of freezing. And this is where I bring back the nervous system. I bring back our brain's access to our feeling body. That's really what the nervous system is. It's all sort of coming from and connecting to this overload that you might be feeling right now is represented here in the astrology. The solution perhaps is represented in that tarot card, in the Six of Swords. And also in this act of discussion, of talking about it and sharing. I think that you aren't alone if you're currently internalizing and are non-verbal and not wanting to say the wrong thing and therefore saying nothing. You're not alone if you are overwhelmed by the current news cycle. The call is to act and to act now, and that's an honourable thing, but it's also the responsibility of the group, not one individual. So I think at this full moon, let's use the excuse of Aquarius to share, to come together, to with boundary and respect and awareness, let one another know how we've been feeling, hold space for that truth, and then practically regroup and practically think of active solutions about how best to move through this current tension. I'm really grateful that the moon is sitting right here at this tarot card, because this is probably all we need to do right now, is to recognize if and where we've been sitting in something that may drown us, and come together and move from this danger. So I'm going to be using this card as we journey further on in this reading together, and I pull out a card for each of the signs. We'll use this as the backdrop, and perhaps it might come in some sort of interplay with the other cards too. Having said all of that, and being really direct and really honest with that feeling, there is something quite beautiful happening next week. So maybe 3 or 4 days after the full moon, on the 12th of August, the planet Jupiter and the planet Venus will come into exact conjunction in the same place in the sign Cancer. And from our last readings, I think I told you that Jupiter in Cancer is going to be with us for a period of 12 months, and Jupiter in Cancer knows exactly what to do and can work in their best effect, can expand and grow and encourage our hope and our faith, and also maybe alchemize a little bit of those lovely feelings into something that looks like wisdom, or something that sounds and feels like wisdom. I think that Jupiter representing the wisdom seeker or the wisdom maker is something really nice to remember when we work with our astrology. The sign Cancer is cardinal water. So out of all of the water signs, I'm relieved, even though it does feel a bit lopsided at the moment with all the fire and the air in the current energetic field. If we've only got a little bit of water to work with, I'm so relieved that it's Cancer, because they are the ones that know exactly what to do in times of crisis. They know exactly what needs to be done in times of emotional intensity too. There's something of a great protector about Cancer, which is really powerful for us right now in terms of relating to your emotional self with active strategies to nurture, to care, to feed, and to soothe. I'm so sorry if you've been feeling overwhelmed for the last months. I'm so sorry if you've been feeling completely fried and helpless and ineffective in your action. And I'm really sorry too if your faith has faltered in some capacity. With Venus meeting up with Jupiter, I want you to mark that date, the 12th of August, in your diary, and be actively conscious to the love and wisdom in your life. I want you to be actively conscious of everything that makes you feel beloved, that makes you feel beautiful, that makes you feel that you have something like faith in your life. In working with astrology and tarot at this current time, you're going to come across a multitude of different opinions, and like any group that comes together or reveals itself, like any wisdom tradition, like any academic field, you're going to come across moments where your faith or your knowledge is at loggerheads with the faith and knowledge of other folks. This work is incredibly beneficial for folks like us. It can also be a slippery stream when power is involved and when supremacy rears its head. Don't let anyone tell you that your version of astrology is incorrect if it makes you feel that you understand yourself. Don't let anybody engage with you at this time in an intellectual sparring match about something so ripe in terms of a healing modality. This work, hopefully, you never find it prescriptive. Hopefully, you never find it predictive as well. Hopefully, we can work with these stories of the planets, of the signs, even of the tarot, in a way that gives you an opportunity to recognize yourself or to think about a situation with a clearer head. That's the only way that this sort of work works for me in any capacity. When it comes to differing systems, it's only natural. Across the world over, we all look to the sky in some way. We always have. We all have a different system, a different rhythm, a different technique, and every single one of them should have its right place in a sense of validity. Nobody's astrology is better than anybody else's, and nobody should be using this work in order to predict the worst. It's endemic with this kind of stuff, and I think it can be quite disheartening too when you've come to work with this world and this language and develop your vocabulary, only to then realize what lies behind some people's motivations for entering into this work. It can be seductive to predict something and get it right. It can be seductive to feel something of academic superiority over somebody else. It can also be an incredibly slippery slope into power play and into manipulation. So hopefully, by working with these outer planets in air signs, as fraught and as overwhelming as it is right now, hopefully once we've settled into this, we'll be able to recognize that we are aware to what works, what doesn't, what feels like supremacy, and also what feels like manipulation too. The current platform that we're engaging on right now is designed to keep you on it and to keep you ingesting more of the same topic that you've been looking up. It doesn't matter what it's showing you, only to keep you engaged. And in that sort of unconscious meditative rhythm of consumption, it can be very dangerous what is let into the unconscious mind and what ideas start to or calcify and grow within you. We saw it happen during the COVID pandemic with people that we loved. It's now our responsibility to work with this as a tool and to maintain a healthy boundary around this technology, because they all want us addicted, and it's up to us to break the cycle. Oh, that feels, how does that feel? Are you all right? I hope so. Let's continue. Let's prepare for some tarot now, I think. I think it's the right time. So if this is your first time listening to me, we're now going to pull a tarot card for each of the signs of the zodiac. Now, I'm also going to be sewing in or folding in some of the astrology as I see it. Possibly it might be heavily focused on your rising sign. A lot of my viewers have come to learn that when talking about the specifics of the house system, it's best to listen to your rising sign. However, you're so welcome to listen to your sun sign too, your moon sign as well. there might be some information there for you. And also as an exercise for the rest of 2025, as I have done before, you might even want to listen to every sign, because part of the prescriptive nature of this work that we're trying to move away from has us divided and separated on the basis of our zodiac sign, when in actual fact, when you look at a chart like this, you recognize that each and every sign has its part to play in us. It may be emphasized by the sun, it may be emphasized by the moon, it may be emphasized by the eastern horizon. However, each of the signs we can find in ourselves in some capacity. And the more work we do to recognize that, the more we start to break down the barriers between us. This work shouldn't be another tool to divide and separate us. Hopefully it can be a tool to understand the specifics of our nature and the beauty of our light and shade, and also what we have in common with one another too. So I'm going to get a tarot pile. Which do we want? I think we might take Old Faithful. This is the Stretch Tarot, which I can probably put a link in the description. Can you see that? There we go, that's the back there. This deck has proven to be my go-to for the last several years. A beautiful friend of mine gave it to me. It was a gift from a friend of theirs, and it was a mystery for some years because it was found in an op shop for $1 with just an elastic band around it. There's no book or anything like that. But with some sleuthing, we've come to recognize who designed it, and they're an incredible artist out of the UK. So it was published in 2015. So if you recognize there's the Six of Swords from the Stretch, if you recognize those images through my work, and you've asked in the past what the deck is, and I've said to you, I've told you that story, well now it's the Stretch Tarot. So we've found the mothership. But yeah, I'll get some cards out for each of the signs, so we can work with this moon, and we can also tend to our nervous system in a responsible way. That's enough. Okay. So, I'd like for you to close your eyes if that's comfortable for you. And we'll start off just with some simple deep breaths. And from what I understand, that a count of 4 on the breath in, a count of 4 to hold it, a count of 4 to breathe out, and then again will be good for us. So, breathe in and hold and out. And in and out. And in and out. I'd like for you to feel the ebb and the flow of the water underneath our vessel as we sit here together. I'd like for you to hopefully feel the anticipation of reaching our destination, somewhere steady and clear and bright, away from the murky, swishy, choppy place that we're leaving behind. I'd like for you to recognize the glint of the swords that surround us, not as a cage, not as a physical manifestation of entrapment of the mind, but as a healthy, protective, noble boundary. Each sword represents our ideology, our information, our intelligence. And we've reached a point in our development that we know factually that it's our time to move from this mania. That we can hold these swords to be true, with honesty and with conviction, and not to be used as a weapon, but rather as a force field, a boundary to protect our energy, and a possibility of clarity for others when we've set up camp. So, if you'd like to count down with me, let's get our cards. 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. These are our cards for the Aquarius full moon. These will bring us clarity, and these will bring us the truth. So we'll start with Aquarius. I wonder if you've been waiting. This is what I'm sensing right now, Aquarius. Hopefully it's not been for too long, and hopefully you can feel the solidity of how worthwhile the wait has been. Soon enough you're going to be coming into contact with someone that is trustworthy, that is available to you, and that has been holding their contribution gently out towards you, as much opposed to some of the contrasting energy of the last bit of time, a lot of the fire, a lot of the drama, a lot of the movement. This person isn't so interested in that kind of excitement. They can see a little further into the distance. They can see a little further into the future. And they've got 2 feet on the ground, or maybe 4 if they're on horseback. That's a nice image. 4 feet on the ground, a rucksack of tools, and a commitment to you that is going to go the distance. With this person that you've been longing for has its ability to grow. So when working with the optimism of Jupiter and the love of Venus, soon to make their way together on the 12th, I want you to relate to the grit, the sweat, and the hard work with that kind of emotional freedom. I really expect from you at the moment that there's been some tremors, perhaps, in some way in your life. Perhaps it's been to do with your worry or your premonition about the human condition, about your place in the milieu, about how you can best contribute in this life. And I think that this, the Knight of Pentacles, this help has come right on time, because what they have you can hold in your hand. You don't have to talk the talk to try and make yourself believe it. There's no hot air here. There's no empty promises. There's tangibility, something offered right into your hand from this person. And I think at a time when the responsibility of the group feels like it's resting on your shoulders, best to reconfigure and best to get some help from someone that you trust, from someone that says they will be there for you, but also has proved themselves that they will always and always will be there for you. Yeah, that's nice. There you go, Aquarius. So the next card will be for Pisces. It's been a bit of a whirlwind, babe. And there's something of preparation that we're working with you, Pisces, moving into the next lunations. We've got a new moon in Virgo, but then we enter into eclipse season. So there'll be an eclipse in Pisces and an eclipse in Virgo. There's 3 lunations in that axis this time around. And so thinking about what we know of the dragon's head and the dragon's tail, and thinking about what we have seen in our lives when it comes to eclipses, and thinking about last year too, around this time last year, and what was a necessity for you to discover about yourself and what relationships in your life had to run their course. I think that when we look at the 9 of Cups, we see someone who is incredibly satisfied with their emotional labor, with what they've put themselves to as far as the task, as far as the challenge in understanding who they are and how they feel, and the way that they work with their emotional reactions. Perhaps you find yourself to be a different person when coming to challenging moments like we've described. Perhaps in the old days, you would have been really, really overwhelmed, or you would have tried to numb out in some way, tried to bury these incredibly huge feelings. But maybe that's different now. Maybe your strategy has evolved since last time we were met with this level of overwhelm. Maybe you recognize that your sensitivity is not something to be ashamed of. In fact, it's something that you can harness and that you can work with. When it comes to compassion, this is the time for it. When it comes to love and care and sensitivity, this is the time for it. If you're met with criticism, or you're met with abrupt language around your sensitivity, and if that's turned into something of a paranoia, that when the going gets tough, you worry that you're going to fall to pieces, I think that you should really think about this current moment and think about what your hand isn't reaching for, and think about how you've actually realized that you're capable of being awake and aware and present when the going gets tough. We want magic in our lives. We want everyone to get along. We want peace. We want levity. But that doesn't always happen. The trick is not to run away when the going gets tough, but the trick isn't to harden up and to suck it up either. Your sensitivity is part of your chart. It's highly necessary. It would be impossible for you not to react in these ways. Astrology can teach us what we've got to work with. And in fact, in time, it can also teach us what we have that is of beautiful benefit to those around us. So look at those 9 cups. Look at all of those emotional lessons. Look at the difficulty and the beauty that you've kept so safe. And look how willing and able you are to emotional availability. You're still here. You're still here. Congratulations. Maybe when you think about Cancer and you think about Jupiter and Venus meeting up in your 5th house of your creative self-expression, you might be a little more articulate, perhaps, with your sensitivity. You might be a little more open to connecting in those emotional ways once more. This is for Aries. You got the Ace of Cups. And so when I see this card, I'm looking directly at this conjunction of Jupiter and of Venus. So Cancer for you is where you find privacy, the 4 walls that you're creating and the home that you are building for yourself, where you unfurl and unfold in privacy. And I feel that there's something really beautiful happening there at the moment. And I think that what's gotten you here has been a practical conviction, and you've been working really dutifully with the 6 of Swords, that you've called that spade a spade, and you've recognized the boundary that you've needed to maintain in order to keep yourself safe, and you have made room at home to work with this card, to work with this offer. This is a beautiful marker of hope, I think, Aries. This is something that's beginning for you, and perhaps it's different. Perhaps it feels really, really different. Perhaps even from everything that you've had before. I hope that you can work with being able to trust this, and I hope that when working through some of this nervous system burnout with Uranus in Gemini, in that sort of communicating the toll on your nervous system, hopefully that has all been able to aid something at home that feels generative and feels truthful and feels loving and feels perfect. Nothing's perfect, but every now and again there are moments that feel like they are. So drink up, enjoy. Okay, Taurus. Congratulations, babe. You did it. You managed it. It feels like a real moment to step back, to look around and be like, oh, I passed it. I understood. I knew what this was happening for in the end. It didn't maybe initially, and it took me a while to really roll with those punches. But now that it's over, I recognize why it had to happen. This is a powerful moment for you, Taurus. And I think that if nothing else, at the light of the full moon, which will be sort of very visible, it will almost feel like a spotlight on you. Something in the way that you're publicly perceived is reaching its crescendo. And so as much as we're working with this kind of sincere energy at this full moon, I would like for you to take your moment to congratulate yourself and to really feel the satisfaction of culmination. I'd like for you to really feel that you have accomplished such wonderful, brilliant things. I'd like for you to take this moment in that spotlight seriously and without stepping on the moment too. Give yourself a beat to absorb what's being shone back to you. This doesn't happen all the time. This is a moment for you to accept your flowers and to absorb the good feelings that are being offered your way. If we look at your 7th house, there are 2 asteroids as well that are coming into pretty close conjunction. In fact, they will be conjunct in the next week or so. We have Vesta and we have Juno. And I think that the 7th house is a beautiful place for these to arrive. Juno represents the way that we commit, and Vesta represents the way that we worship. And so I think that there's something bright in your 7th house. I think that there's something really substantial in there as well, insofar as emotional sincerity. So this 10th house moment, this public facing self and the accolades, and this doesn't have to be something so ceremonious. This could just be a moment in your life where something has clicked and you're like, oh, I get it now. Whatever it may be, Taurus, keep this in your mind's eye at the full moon, and then have a look into your relationship zone. Have a look at the people that you've kept close or are keeping close or have invited in, and look at the difference in quality from perhaps a little bit of time ago. Look at the way that people relate to you now because of the boundaries that you instilled all that time ago. In fact, perhaps that might be what the congratulations is all about. Who knows? Good one. Okay, Gemini. Now, let's be real. This Uranian shock to the system has never happened before. So maybe you've been in a similar kind of state of numbness that a lot of us have been in. This isn't to say that you're going to feel this all of the time, but it is the first time that this has ever happened in the astrology. This entry of Uranus into your first house, into your sign. So maybe reflect on the last month and have a little bit of a think about the different power surges that have been showing up, and think about the different ways that you have been called to innovate as well. That might be something really interesting to get stuck into, because as far as innovation, we'll be looking to you for the next several years. We'll be looking to your systems of innovation. We'll be looking to the way that you've found a flow that's different to other people. And maybe if you wanted to do a bit of field work to get a taste of what Uranus in the first house looks and feels like, do a little survey. Head out into your world and ask around. Ask people that have Taurus rising and ask them how they feel changed. we're thinking, Uranus does take a long time to move through each of the signs, but there's a consolidation that's just wrapped up in Taurus. We're going to get a last little taste of that, but then next year it's going to be full time in Gemini. So this is just the beginning of innovation for you. And maybe also when thinking about the nervous system, as we were describing before, it might be an incredibly important period of your life where you're actively engaged in the health of your nervous system as well. I went for a period of time where I wasn't drinking coffee, and it's incredible what you physically feel after a time away. I've been trying to sort of flush out my system of all of the different dependencies that I've had, and to partake after a time away, you can feel it sort of running all through you. Now, I'm not a medical astrologer as well, so I don't want to pathologize too much, but I'm looking forward to the next few years for you, Gemini. Let's look at your card. Let's see what we've got here. This is the 7 of Pentacles. And so what I'm kind of called to describe to you is if we look at that full moon in Aquarius and we think about your academic world, if we think about your education, think about what you've been teaching yourself, and this can be as informal or as formal as what works in your life. But I think that the moon is requiring you to take a moment to reflect on how far you've come and what you've been learning and what you have been, ingesting and percolating and testing. And I'd like for you to take almost like a breath at this full moon, just in the way of like hyper focus. There's that line of support that we were describing before between the air signs and the outer planets is going to hopefully be of great help for you over the next years. Hopefully Pluto and Uranus will lead to something of breakthroughs and something of revolutions in the way that you process thought and the way that you birth ideas into life. But right now, the 7 of Pentacles is sort of encouraging you to not chuck it all away, but kind of to, I'll put it this way, sometimes I have a really strong urge to chuck it all away. And I wish that didn't happen, but I've always been that way. Even when I was very young, I would screw up drawings if they weren't working, rather than just sort of come back to them. And in this astrology, in this configuration, there does seem to be a sort of focus on your education, on your study, but also something that looks maybe like a breaking point, or the potentiality of a breaking point to occur too. And with this tarot card being the 7 of Pentacles and being so descriptive of it's not disappointment, but it's just sort of like a sort of ebb in the enthusiasm of the thing. So if you've been feeling on that sort of ebb of enthusiasm right now, Gemini, I'd like for you to recognize that this is a moment in time, and that perhaps maybe even that boundary that you're creating for yourself could be around that impulse to eject, that ejector button search. For some of us, it's eternal, and I wish that it wasn't that way, but there's something about sort of being like, I'm out of here, smash it all, and I'll put on a disguise and I'll skip to the next town and I'll start all over again. That sometimes can be really exhilarating and really a fresh way to, engage in a life. But sometimes in any event, the ninth house does speak about the sort of long haul, the longer stretch of things. There's such an emphasis on sort of like life's work. We all want to leave something behind. We all want to be remembered in some way. I think that's a sort of perfectly natural human impulse. But with that comes incredible guilt or incredible self-criticism when things aren't feeling like they're in a flow state. And so maybe at present you haven't been really feeling like you've been in a flow state. That's perfectly natural, and it's just another state too. It's not eternal. The impulse to cut and run and the impulse to get rid of it and start again, or just forget, just give up, can sometimes, for some of us, not everyone, that can be an eternal impulse. But the trick is, or the difference is, learning how to manage that impulse and not going through with it. I think that what you're doing now, Gemini, is worth it. And hopefully in time you will too. You just need this push from the full moon right now to crack the sads a bit. It's all right. It's all right. Fuck it. Set it down. Pick it up again tomorrow. All right. Cancer. So, the emotional well-being of us all rests on your shoulders, Cancer. This is where Jupiter is. This is where we are all looking to maintain or to salvage something that feels like hope, that feels like faith. And it's also, the good news is where Venus has just entered and where that conjunction between Venus and Jupiter will take place. It's in your sign. So what we know about Cancer is we know the breadth of experience in terms of love and compassion and care and comfort. And we also know the emphasis on those principles that you have been working overtime to emanate right now. Like it or not, love, compassion, comfort for other people, hopefully for yourself too. The full moon is lighting up a place that feels very laden with the bigger or more difficult emotions. And in fact, because it's Aquarius, perhaps even the sort of more difficult realities that I'm thinking the mind, the way that we think. Aquarius is incredibly cerebral, brilliant, incredibly cerebral. When we look at the 8th house, we look at the way that our energy is intertwined and interwoven with that of the other. We think about the contracts that we've signed in this life, legal or otherwise. How are we beholden to other people, and how are they beholden to us? So, as a sign that's ruled by the moon, a full moon in Aquarius in the 8th house, I would probably guarantee, no, I would not guarantee anything, but I might suggest that an Aquarius full moon might be extra specially tender. But the good thing is you've got Jupiter and you've got Venus on your side to work with that tenderness. So let's get this little card and see. Yeah, that makes sense. Who's this? It's probably you. The love and the compassion and the care and the interest that you show other people, the way that you create social dynamics that are based in care and love and feelings is so powerful. The way that you share your space or share your energy with other people is always based in care and love and warmth and tenderness. And it's so powerful and it's so essential right now. And it's so respected and appreciated right now. Perhaps sometimes when we think about an Aquarius moon, we can think about the collective effort. And we do think about the well-being of the human species. We do think about the way that our social structures or communal structures are built and the pitfalls of those, or the way that they do operate. But we're thinking of ways to innovate them and to make these systems work in a greater way. And so I think that probably you have been doing the best that you can, Cancer, to keep your attention on the crisis, the current collective crisis. And I also think that when I was speaking earlier about sort of cerebral burnout, and then that leading to emotional overwhelm, you could probably identify with some of that stuff. And hopefully by knowing and recognizing that Jupiter and Venus are in Cancer right now and imminently they'll be meeting up, hopefully there'll be something in your life, some sort of gesture, some sort of exchange with somebody that feels like a giant, big, warm, beautiful hug, and the love and the warmth and the tenderness that you offer so freely to those around you is received by you for once. Hopefully that sort of care and that support reflects back onto you, because you've been doing the lion's share, and in this astrology you're doing the lion's share. The Queen of Cups is happy as Larry as long as her cup is full. She doesn't give away anything that depletes from her. She can give this amount of attention and love and compassion and warmth to other folks because her love for herself is ever flowing, and her compassion and sense of responsibility to nurture herself is always in effect. So don't sell yourself short. Keep your skills coming because you're so good at this stuff. But don't give too much of yourself away if you need something back. Yeah. Sorry, my legs have gone to sleep, so I need to move around. Okay. Leo. So Leo, I missed out on your new moon. I apologize for that. I had some beautiful things to say about how we admire you. I had some lovely things to say about the encouragement that we receive from our Leo friends in terms of self-confidence. And I had some lovely things to say about the way that Leos work beautifully in rhythm and in synergy with those around them when they're being themselves. But I missed out. I wasn't available to commit. So looking at your little sign and looking at what is occurring right now, I am looking at the asteroid Proserpina too. So in the Greek myth, she was called Persephone. You probably know who the dark goddess is. You probably are aware that there was a bargain struck that had Persephone or Proserpina 6 months of the year above ground, engaging and acting as the goddess of springtime, and then the other 6 months of the year held to her responsibilities as queen of the underworld. There's something beautiful about that mythology in the way of not being frightened of the dark. And so working with the astrology of right now and working with all of those crunchy, exhaustive parts of our nervous system and working through the fear and working with the fear, not through it, actually sitting with it and making friends with it. I can see that the Queen of the Night is in your company right now. I missed out on letting you know that Mercury has been retrograde in your sign too for the past however many weeks, and will station direct quite soon after this full moon. So there will be a sense of, hopefully, clarity for you moving forward. But in my absence, I recognize what other folks have been going through in the last month, and hopefully you have been able to work with the confusion or the misunderstanding, and also hopefully you've been able to harness your darker recesses if they've been showing up for you. Hopefully there's been some tenderness that you can work with, and the Queen of the Night, and hopefully also you recognize the power of being good in the dark too. There's so much light to a Leo, isn't there? There's so much responsibility on a Leo to be as the light. I wonder what the dark side of the sun looks like, though I guess from what we know there really isn't one. But I think that there is a dark side of Leo, and I think that there's a right for Leo to have those more brooding or lonesome or quiet moments too. So much light needs a little dark. So let's have a look at the tarot and see what we've got for you here. This describes a balancing act for me. This describes the Two of Pentacles. It does feel like sometimes it's running on empty. I mean, you can see in this version of the card, there's a great skill involved in keeping everything weighted and everything upright. There's a strength there too, but I like that this this Queen of the Night, Proserpina idea has entered the reading as well. It's okay to be not okay, Leo. That's for damn sure. And I think probably out of all of the signs of the zodiac, there might be a greater responsibility for you to suck it up. There's nothing weak about voicing or expressing the idea that perhaps you might not be okay at this time. Everything that we've described as far as our nervous systems and as far as shocks to the systems, and also as far as the sort of unconscious weight of the world. It's okay to not be okay, and it's much easier for you when you are okay. It's much easier for you to be bright and to be bold and to be available. It's just a matter of learning. That's what astrology is for. You know, you can learn about the different deities, you learn about the different myths and mythologies, and then you can also pick a little thing or two up if you want to. Not every myth has a grand secret to share, but there's something about the persistence of some of these stories that's worth mentioning. Persephone or Proserpina wasn't a victim. She found her autonomy in darkness. She found a alternative skill set in darkness. She found that she was really good in the dark as well as the light. You're not expected to be running on high at every moment. Maybe this full moon in Aquarius has brought up some feelings that you have in regard to the way that you relate to other folks, in regard to those that you love. Perhaps there's a spotlight with the full moon on relationships, past and present, and that's had you feeling a little bit dark or a little bit lonely. It's okay. This balancing act of keeping everything up and everything running, you know, the stress of maintaining, of just maintaining, I think a lot of this lesson that I've taken from Uranus in Gemini and that shock to the nervous system has been like, if you've got nothing, then you've got nothing, and that's okay. You need to wait and rest until you do have something to offer and something to give. You're not going to be forgotten, Leo. It's impossible. So if you need to take a moment in the dark, take it. It's okay. So Virgo, we're moving into your season soon enough. On the 23rd of August, that's Southern Hemisphere calendar, we're going to begin Virgo season. And we're also going to begin with a new moon in your first house straight away, the very first day, as the moon moves in, as the sun moves into Virgo, so too does the moon in exact synchronicity. And then after that, it will be eclipse season. So the dragon's tail is still existing in your first house, and it will be there for another year. So this is what we're sort of preparing ourselves for after the fact. Right now, focusing on Aquarius and focusing on Cancer, there's a couple of different stories that we can share with one another. Your guiding light, the planet Mercury, has been retrograde in Leo for some time, for about 3 weeks or so. And so there has been perhaps limits to your access to clarity. And thinking about the moon and its glow, we're lighting up the areas in your life that feel like an obligation. Whether you like it or not, these things have to be tended to, and that can sometimes be a sort of bitter pill to swallow when you feel consistently expected to. The sixth house has got its great lesson for all of us, and a lot of us actually are probably really good in the sixth house. And I think that Virgo is probably one of those signs that once in rhythm actually really can do some incredible stuff in the sixth house. But I do keep my eye on this sort of overwhelm that sort of has brought itself to say hello in this reading, but also what I can really register from people in my life. And so the full moon is highlighting your acts of service, the necessity for you to repeat and refine and to go over. And soon enough, the sun and the moon are going to take something further away from you. Eclipses are unknowable in their eclipses are unknowable in their expression. We don't fully we can never fully know for sure what will occur. There's many different schools of thought on what the dragon's tail and the dragon's head and eclipses are meant for as well. Just in recent history, though, I am pretty aware of the size of the repercussions of eclipses over the last several years. So let's get a card. There's something sharp about this card. There's something that makes me feel when I see the Queen of Swords, sometimes I can feel in trouble. I can feel that I'm being reprimanded in some way. Out of all of the court cards in the tarot, the Family of Swords are the least eager for sentimentality. Something very sharp, very caustic maybe about them. And with all of this air energy, with all of this sort of intellect being contended with right now, and with all of the compartmentalizing of truth and fact and separating fact from fiction that's happening right now, probably a lot of us have felt a little in rhythm with the Queen of Swords, or at least wanted to. I hope that I could approach my life with their clarity, and with the Queen of Swords' ability to separate bullshit from reality. I'm not very good at that at all. In fact, out of all of the cards in the tarot, I find it really difficult to identify with the Queen of Swords. I've known a lot of Queen of Swords in my life, for good and for bad. But right now, this might almost be an example for you of actually, sorry, this is confusing for me, this one. Because I think that a lot of people have been working in bad faith, thinking that they have something in common with the Queen of Swords. Now, if we work with the idea of the principle that the court cards in the tarot are working in good faith, and when we think about the different levels of mastery around the topic that are concerned, the Queen of Swords should be someone who is really clear-minded and can see in front of them the truth, and is not mincing words with the way that they are projecting that truth. They are dividing and separating in their life in order to not suffer bullshit, and they're not going to sugarcoat anything. In fact, they'll probably be quite abrupt with their approach when it comes to the truth. But because they are part of the court cards of the tarot, we can hopefully trust that impulse or trust that action from them. But too many folks at present are raging as if they are this card. There's a certain level of righteousness with the way that we relate to one another, particularly in a social media way, that is done with. Radicalization can happen at all sides, and compulsion can happen to the best of us. And when working with ideology as a weapon, that can only get us into trouble. So I hope that this boundary that's being put in place is to protect oneself from doing further harm. I hope that this pair of cards is speaking to you in some way that will set you free from overwhelming your own nervous system. Uranus sits at Gemini in your 10th house of your most public facing self, how other folks perceive you. All eyes on you in the 10th house, as opposed to the privacy of the 4th, if that makes sense. And so what I can see is an incredible amount of language and an incredible necessity to step back from that. Because if this is going to be a continuum over the next however many years that Uranus will be traveling through the 10th house for you, I hope that there is room for you to separate yourself. And I hope that there's room for you to be able to assess what truth is worth repeating. Weird. I hope that that's all right, Virgo. That's strange. But there you have it. So this one's for Libra. On that sort of strangeness from Virgo, we come to you, Libra, and we can feel Mars having just entered your sign. So we can feel attachment to rage, attachment to aggression. We can see that sort of face-off between Saturn and Mars, Neptune and Mars. We can sort of feel that it almost feels like battle lines are drawn. And that would be a really difficult place on your chart, because Libra representing your first house and Aries representing your 7th house, that feels really intimate. That feels really kind of like, I hope that this isn't playing out literally in your life, that there's a sort of rage that is taking over to a point where you need to let him have it. If that's the case, work out how you're going to express that, how you're going to contend with that kind of tension. It felt like in the pandemic, when ideological lines were drawn, it did feel quite overwhelming for a lot of people, because they didn't recognize behaviors in folks that they really love and have come to admire. People were behaving in many different ways, and I don't think that any of us were really immune to that reality. So that period of time was quite confronting for the majority of people. It's not over, of course. We do our best to adapt to new circumstances. But what is really obvious, I feel, is that the systems of like sort of control, as it were, or like the access to information 24 hours a day has not ceased. In fact, it's only grown stronger. The sort of radicalization of the internet's ability to radicalize has not waned, I'll put it that way. And it's not uncommon now for further strains on relationships to occur. Hopefully, in time, there will be room for repair, and there will be room for people to speak to one another in a way that honors vulnerability and makes room for reparations to be made. But having just described the current state of the energy in the air right now, the last thing that seems necessary, or the last thing that you could want, is further interpersonal conflict. So let's get a card and let's see what it says. So you've got the Hierophant. What I really like about this version of the card Libra is that is a portrait of Marie Laveau, the Queen of Voodoo, and there's a whole series of keys lined up underneath her, and if those keys don't work, then there's also a series of lockpicks that she'll use to get to the root of the matter. I love this version of the card because it does speak to someone who has devoted their lives to healing, to working with their spirits and working with their tools in order to get to the root cause of what has been locked up for the longest time. And so working with this as our guiding light for this full moon at this time, resisting the urge to explode, resisting the urge to let him have it. I think that there's something deeper that we can excavate here, deeper that we can explore with the company of the Hierophant. Perhaps this is a face-off between an old story and a current one. And perhaps there's a journey that you're taking that will require preparation and will require safe passage and safe boundary, but that has you being able to face something from long ago. I think that Saturn can really represent the timekeeper. And so in conjunction with Neptune, in conjunction with our capacity to dream, but also the risk of deluding ourselves or getting washed away, Saturn and Neptune together has a very different feeling from Saturn alone. This face-off that we've just described with Mars and with Saturn and Neptune, this worry that I expressed about being quick to anger, this sort of looks like something, it could look like something from earlier on or long ago. And so Mars will be pressing the soft points, the pressure points, and Saturn and Neptune, or Neptune will almost be egging on Saturn or bringing things up, dredging things up from the deep. And so in this moment of friction, in the company of a full moon, where we are really emotionally vulnerable, it might be really, really good to remember those that walk the earth, that are trained, and also recognize what they're attempting to do. If the keys don't work, the lockpicks are there, but only then will they use them. Go gently with yourself, Libra. Don't worry too much if you can at all afford it. And try and separate yourself, if at all possible, from the combustible nature of air and fire. If you need an anchor point, then look to Cancer, look to Jupiter, and look to Venus on the 12th of August, making that conjunction together. Overt care, overt love. On the top of your chart, public facing self, it's a good place to have it. What you're putting out there needs to have its undercurrent in love. This face-off of an old story and the current reality needs the guided support from someone who knows what they're doing. No gurus are going to help. They'll only make things worse. Queens do it better. Scorpio. So, Scorpio, there's going to be that meetup of Vesta and Juno in your first house. And I wonder what that might look like for you. I'd be really interested to hear how and if you've been feeling and working with those two archetypes, those two energies. In astrology, Juno can represent our ability to commit And Vesta can represent our ability to harness the magic of fire. And so if you think about these two coming together in your first house of yourself, what I can see is something of an ignition, an ignition occurring from within, but also almost it feels like a commitment to magic, as broad of an idea as that might feel or sound like. I think at this time it's essential. If we look to the other activation of water, as I said before, with Jupiter and Venus in Cancer, that coming together on the 12th of August, that is going to be speaking to in trine this configuration of the asteroids in your first house. I hadn't mentioned those asteroids to everyone, but because they're in your first house and in your sign, it was worth mentioning. And because Cancer represents your 9th house, which is where you do expand your mind and travel and learn and absorb the mysteries of the galaxy, a commitment to fire or a commitment to the goddess of fire sounds pretty powerful in the first house. So hopefully amidst all of this air and fire and the exhaustive feeling of the nervous system, you've been able to harness that. If we're worried about oxygen blowing up the fire, creating something that is of size that we can't cope, we need Vesta to bring in the sacred element. We need that sort of ritualistic quality around the element of fire right now. So see how you go. I'll get you your tarot card. I think that, this is the Empress. I think that that's where we're going with this reading. The full moon will be highlighting a part of your chart that's very private, the 4th house of your home, your root system, your privacy, all the while amidst all of this fire and this air, and with this entry of Mars into your 12th house of your unconscious mind, we must link Mars to you. Mars is the planet that rules your sign, and so I would like for this part of the year, this lunation, this middling point of our calendar, to be something of an initiation rite for you in terms of how you're going to harness your fire and your passions from here on in. If you want to use Jupiter as a marker point, think about the next 12 months as a devoted practice to your magic in whatever capacity, whatever color or shape that looks like for you. But if it has been a long time of you wondering about your abilities in something that feels mysterious, then now is the time to commit to it. It couldn't be better with Juno and with Vesta coming together and Venus and Jupiter coming together, all of that incredible goddess energy, all of that incredible, the strength of water, the strength of emotional capacity, the strength of fire to burn amidst the water. It's all happening. So all of that just that I was describing about the tension of air and of fire, I think that there's a part that you can play in this that's harnessed in water, but has the capacity to work with fire as magic. Go with it. Feel it. Maybe on the 12th of August, look around for confirmation as well. If there was some sort of coursework that you were wanting to engage in, or something, some book that you had in your, you've had in the cart for a long time, but you've not, because you're not sure if it's available to you, the knowledge. Take your magical practice seriously. And that's a point that will vacillate too. That's a recommitment ceremony that we all must undertake. Take your magic seriously. It's all well and good to say. In theory, in practice, it takes courage, and it does take a recommitment ceremony time and again. It's okay. Nothing is eternal, except for our spirits, but who knows where they go and come back. I want for you to register how your magic gives your life context, how it creates safety for you, how it creates, how it makes sense to you. And I want for you to be able to believe yourself at this moon. I believe you. And I hope that in time you'll be able to believe yourself too. Sagittarius. So, Uranus in its overwhelmingly present reality, with its overwhelmingly obvious effect on our nervous system, has just entered into your 7th house, which is how you relate to other people, the important folks in your life, those that you would consider your nearest and dearest beloveds. Now, this is a long story, as I said, and the outer planets tend to speak to something more collective in their nature. But what might be interesting for you to think about is just for the last month, if there's been anything, there may not have been, but if you can feel or remember or recall any power surges that arrived in your beloved's house, in the house of other people, if it is relationship styles that have reconfigured, if it could be something that you never would have expected, however, has just sort of shown up and you're wondering if you should go with it or not, make note of that. I think I'd be fascinated to speak to my Sagittarius risings, in the midst of it. I'd like to explore what Uranus in the 7th house might mean for you, might mean for us. One way to examine that would be to reach out to your Scorpio rising friends, if you have any, and just get reflexive and get deep about chatting about love and chatting about connection with them. And if they're open to it, just go over the last let me think, I can't remember how many years it was, I think 7 years, which is a long time, let's face it, and that's a long enough time for the 7th house to evolve and to reconform, and to shock us a little bit. Our relationships will hopefully always bring surprises with them. The way that we're learning how to sort of mediate and moderate our reaction is the big life work, and also how we learn to adapt and evolve and improve the quality of our relationship style is something too. The moon is in your 3rd house, so as far as this lunar ritual, the 3rd house is a beautiful place for the moon to rest in. In the Hellenistic tradition of astrology, the 3rd house was called the house of the goddess, or the chamber of the moon. And so to have the moon in the 3rd house was thought of as a fertile place for the moon. When I think of the 3rd house in definition of the house of the goddess, I do think about all of the different ways that we enact ritual in privacy, or we engage with our spirituality in ways that are separate to textbooks or separate to the academic theorem of spiritual practices, that are more to do with the day-to-day ways that we worship and make thanks for the blessings in our life. So as simply as that, Sagittarius, it might be nice to be thankful for what you've got at this full moon, and also start to fantasize and think about your relationships. There's a trine between Pluto and Uranus in those two houses, the third house and the seventh house. It'd be interesting to see how that develops over time too. The dramatic reconfiguration of love language. Just an example. Let's see what the tarot says. Well, that's positive. That's hopeful. That's quite seductive to see. I love the pages in the tarot because they are representative of someone who was born with it. And so when I'm thinking about the element of fire in this context, and I'm thinking about our sort of trepidation around the face-off between air and fire right now in the astrology, I'm reminded of your abilities in that world, in that realm. The thing I love about Sagittarius so much is their expertise in the element of fire. There's something so sacred about what a Sagittarius knows about fire in ritual, fire as attached to the idea of our soul worship, spirit worship, God worship. Our spirituality and the element of fire across the board are intertwined in some capacity. And as much as there feels like a beautiful expertise in Sagittarius, when I think about a page of fire, I think about someone who was raised with that knowing, was brought up in those circles. And so thinking about your privacy of the third house, thinking about the possibility of change in the seventh house, I want to say it. There might be someone new traveling through your life who you've been wondering about, and perhaps in some ways you've been secretly willing into existence too. A bit of freshness in the fire. I think Sagittarius as a spiritual sign, I wouldn't say is particularly solitary. There's something so beautiful and fruitful about coming into relationship and contact with people that you can speak the same language with, that on spiritual topics you have things in common. And for solo practitioners, the possibility of coming into contact with someone that shares your hopes and dreams of the world is really enticing. And out of everyone, the page of fire does represent that possibility. So maybe write to them in your third house moon ritual. Maybe use the house of the goddess, the chamber of the moon, as a place of magic potential. Strike a match when you light your candles tonight. See who that brings in. Finally, Capricorn. So Capricorn, I missed your full moon after my jolt of inspiration, after my incredible time with the possibilities of Jupiter in Cancer and my journey with the waterfalls and with the rush that I was feeling through my system. The full moon in Capricorn stopped me in my tracks. This was the moment when my words just wouldn't arrive, and I became incredibly fearful in some way. I missed describing you back to yourself. I missed the celebration that a full moon can bring in. I missed the spotlight on you, just you, your sign, everything that you've come to learn about yourself as a Capricorn rising, as the one that puts in the work, that in solitude climbs the mountain to reach the precipice, to find enlightenment, and then to reject that moment because they have to turn around and go down the mountain again to show everybody what they've found. Capricorn has this reputation for being addicted to prestige, power, excess. There's something so vulnerable about a Capricorn who doesn't know who else to be without their work, who has learned over time that their work is all that they're really worth. And so I'm sorry that I missed celebrating you. I'm really glad that I'm here now with you to describe further what might be occurring in your 7th house. There are people slowly gathering around you, Capricorn, and Jupiter and Venus are coming in to exact conjunction to burst forward with their expressions of love for you. Saturn, your guiding light, the grand Father Time, the container that binds us to our obligations, is the one in face-off with an aggressive, agitated, but kind of pathetic Mars at present. This is the face-off, two forces of the zodiac that are willing and wanting to reign supreme over the other, but are not in a place that makes them feel comfortable. What we've got to rely on and work with at this time of air and fire is the love and compassion and warmth that's emanating from your nearest and dearest, from people that love you and that are telling you that they love you. You're remarkable, Capricorn, and you've been through such an incredible journey so far. And in this time of possible restriction, possible in effect, there might be a glimmer of hope for you to relax a little bit and to listen to what those around you are attempting to tell you, attempting to profess their love and gratitude for you in their life. So don't be shy. This is the Chariot, and this is the major secret for the sign Cancer. Cancer is the cardinal water sign that matches your cardinal earth energy. Earth and water in confidence and in stoicism and in expertise. You know what you're doing, they know what they're doing. When it comes to love, there is something unafraid about that offering. When it comes to sincerity, there is a gleaming obviousness to the sincerity of your love and to the quality of love that is offered to you too. In best effect, you need to believe it. And the moon is the guiding light for all of this. So what I want you to remember, Capricorn, is that as the moon moves month to month around the zodiac, so too does our emotional capacity, so too do the ebbs and flows of our feelings. There's a coldness sometimes with Capricorn that's expected. There's a remoteness sometimes with Capricorn that is expected. But when we look at the opposition of Capricorn and of Cancer, we look to what each is offering the other. As brisk as they are and as argumentative sometimes as they are, we know that the sincerity of the love connection is often the greatest gift and the biggest hurdle sometimes for the dance of Capricorn and Cancer. You are worthy of love, my darling, and you are worthy of celebration. And so hopefully at this time of recalibrating our nervous systems together hopefully at a time when you're considering your resources, your values, your coin, when you're birthing something, or when you're examining the progress that you're making in that world. Hopefully when you're setting a healthy mental boundary around your identification with your value, you'll be able to feel the love for you that's got nothing to do with what you own or possess or develop. You are worthy of love if you do nothing else with the rest of your life but eat cream cakes. It's incredibly powerful and noble to be so ambitious. It's also one part of a beautiful whole of you, Capricorn. So accept the love in where you can find it. That's our zodiac, everyone. That's the Aquarius full moon. That's my understanding of what Gemini and Uranus might present to us. And that's how best I can see working with and through that feeling. Now, if you're still here, I might just quickly describe I wonder if it's so necessary now that we've been through that. What I will say is that I am in the process of wrapping up the monetary subscriptions to this channel. I'm going to, if you subscribe monthly, I'm going to be reaching out to you with a consolidated, an email to consolidate that subscription, because unfortunately I don't feel reliable enough for the rest of this year to commit to giving horoscopes every 2 weeks. When I recommit, the fear of not meeting that commitment can overwhelm. And privately, I'm in the process of consolidating and tending to my own grief, as it were. I think a lot of my readers are aware of my experience this year, and also with my the health of my own nervous system. And so I'm in process now, taking active steps in therapy to consolidate some of that residual grief in my body and in my heart. And there's not enough room for me to continually miss my commitment to you all. I've enjoyed doing this work for so much over the last 3 years that I've been engaged in this format. I'm also consolidating my own feelings about having a presence on the internet and relating to the world through the lens of the internet. I've been registering my own frustration about the addictive quality of these platforms, and also the incessant talking heads, the talk to camera engagement. I've been really racking my brain as to how I can continue with my practice and engaging with you and this work in a way that feels authentic and that doesn't feel compulsive, and also doesn't feel as desperate as sort of content creation feels right now. I, in some ways, look to Uranus in Gemini, reconfiguring the way that we do interact as a culture. And I think that the pitfalls of algorithmic content consumption have really proven themselves to be quite obvious. And as far as making a living off this sort of work, and maybe not this sort of work, but definitely sort of like audio-visual work, the incentive to continue to create, as opposed to the amount of eyes that actually are shown the work, has really sort of thrown itself off kilter lately too. There's many different factors as to why I'm going through this process, and I don't know what I will come up with as of yet, but I do know that receiving subscription money for work that is irregular doesn't sit ethically with me at all. So, as I said, for those of you that are subscribed monthly, I'll be turning that option off soon enough, and I'll be in direct contact with you as to how you would like to wrap up that subscription. And I can't tell you how grateful I have been to all of you for your ongoing support over the years. The tip jar is still open. If there was, if you felt called to contribute financially, you can head to my PayPal. Make sure it's a friends and family donation. And I will be picking up with readings. I think September is the month that might be available, although I need to work on that too. This whole journey has been so powerful and so beneficial and so helpful for me at a time when I really, really needed it most, to be able to give my own life context through learning about astrology, learning about my own channel, and finessing that access has been so powerful. And I've read for hundreds and hundreds of you now privately, and I'll be so grateful to all of those relationships. I'm not giving up. It's essential that I reassess. So if you would like to support my work, you can tip via my PayPal. If you would like to book a reading, you can head to my website and you can arrange to have a one-on-one reading with me via that platform. And thank you so much for tuning in to my channel here on YouTube. And I will see you in the next one, whenever that may be, as opposed to in 2 weeks. I need some more time to work through my grief and to be the best version of myself that I can be, in order to provide your astrology with some contextual benefit, and to read your cards with love in my heart and with clarity in my head. So, Uranus and Gemini, flipping the script, changing it up. Who knew? I will see you very, very soon, and no promises, no regrets, all love. Take care.